Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching from today. This is Controversial Sitcom. Today, I'm looking at a very controversial topic, a very sensitive topic: selective perceptions or selective criticism. Even you that you're watching, you're listening to this channel, you do have what is known as selective perceptions. This is a way that you view things, a way that you, on your own privateness, think about certain things, and that also will determine how you will respond to those things. Selective perceptions has connection with your cultural upbringing, your tradition, or your religious upbringing. I will explain that later on in this video. Selective perceptions, the way you were brought up or whatever you taught between right and wrong, will determine how you will judge in a subjective value or an objective value. And it doesn't matter whether it's wrong or right to you, as far as your judgment is in line with what you are taught of right and wrong based on your culture, your tradition, your religions. Those norms and values is what you will uphold. Now, in other words, we're saying that selective perception is a form of bias because we interpret information in a way that is congruent with our existing values and beliefs. You don't want to answer, you deflect, you ignore certain issues because it's not in agreement with your belief. What is objective and subjective thinking? That plays into the atmosphere of selective perception or selective criticism. Subjective thinking, it is completely based on an individual's beliefs, your cultural perspective, your environment, your immediate brought up. It might also be relevant or relatively to your ethnicity, to your race, and may or may not reflect the beliefs shared by others. Subjective thinking may dismiss facts to align with one's own personal opinions. I'll give you some certain examples for you to look at this in a political perspective, the agenda or propaganda or policies that is related to the beliefs of those group or sets of people. I've looked at political perspective, the two major political groups that we have in America, the Republican and the Democrat. It's more like an insignificant or minute example that I will give. The United States, which is very funny, the Republican perspective, gun control, they love it. They back it up with some constitutional defense. The Second Amendment, which gives you the right to bear arms. But the Second Amendment gives you the right to bear arms. What is the definition of arm? Because to defend yourself, you don't need an AK-47. You don't need name it. So if the right to defend yourself, why? That means an individual has the right to own a nuclear weapon, which obviously the government wouldn't allow. So the defense of the Republican on right, I think there should be a specification on what kind of weapons citizens are allowed to own, because there are some weapons that are militarily based or defined or structured kind of weapons. You defend yourself, you have a 6 rounds of a pistol, or I'm not good with guns or names of guns or the caliber of guns. But that's the controversial aspect, controversial discussion. What kind of weapons on arms is logical for the Republicans to define that you as a person, as a citizen, based on the Second Amendment, has the right to own? Selective perception, selective criticism. The United States in a whole has faced at least 202 mass shootings so far this year, 2023. According to the Gun Violence Archive, there have been more mass shootings than these in 2023. Do you know that? The Republican Party has no issue with that. They don't care. They have no issue because it's selective perceptions. Selective perceptions. That is what they believe, and they stick with that. But what do that do when such happened or began to be an alarm that is more frequent than we ever had in this nation. They deflate the argument to mental health. That guns don't kill people, people kill people. But you're forgetting on the controversial viewpoint, if the guns are not available, understandable, people will kill people. Sure, with other means, that will be your argument. But the funny thing is that guns, depending on the kind of guns, with an AK-47, you could kill a higher number of people than you using a knife. That is the difference. That is the defensive, controversial argument against whatever you perceive it's your selective perception or selective argument. So your selection of what to defend, your belief or cultural belief, it's something that both parties usually don't agree on. Republican will always deflate gun control to mental health, and understandably this is happening. But the funny thing is, like, not all mass shooters have mental issues. So now you're taking the attention away from people that are actually suffering from this mental health issue. I don't think the politicians or the policy of the Republican has some foundation in that argument. Mental health, mental health, mental health. Instead of deflecting, why don't you put a specification on what kind of guns based on this, or ammunition, arms, based on the Second Amendment that the citizens are allowed to own? Why should I, as a citizen, be more comfortable with a military assault rifle? What does that have to do? Am I going to war? Am I trying to defend myself from a million zombies, or the entire neighborhood, or the entire state? What am I doing with AK-47? So those high caliber ammunitions, I don't think they have a place in citizenship for people to defend themselves. Ammunitions, arms, Second Amendment. So why ain't no citizens given the right to own a nuclear weapon? Because nuclear weapons, arms also. It's ammunition, okay? A citizen can own a torpedo. So how about that? That's the controversial viewpoint. So I think that's a selective criticism, a selective defense of perceptions. The Democrats, on the other hand, believe that we can reduce gun violence while respecting the right of responsible gun owners. We believe, the Democrats believe, they should expand and strengthen background checks for those who wants to purchase a firearm, because it shouldn't be easier to get a gun than a driver license. It's beautiful. That is the defense that the Democrat put against gun control when the Republican try to argue from a perspective of the Second Amendment. The Democrat is making it know, okay, understandable, the Second Amendment, which allows citizens to defend themselves. But however, let's put it a more strict way so that these guns will not get into the hands of people that understand the rules of when, how to use a gun, or people that are more restrained before they pull the trigger. Background checks. Republican, you said mental health. Okay, so let's check if this person that's about to get this gun has some mental issue. If that's a qualification, the criteria that the person should have that gun, or be able to give clearance to own a gun, right? Or then again, why don't we put it this way? A list or specification of guns that are allowed to be owned by citizens. We're not at war, are we? Defend yourself, of course. So what do you do with a military assault rifle? We're not at war. You defend yourself against who with a military assault rifle? You defend yourself against only like AK-47 or some high caliber ammunitions. A controversial viewpoint. Why this isn't Republicans? Why this is not being allowed to own a nuclear weapon? It's ammunition, the Second Amendment, right? So you see, sometimes the selective perception is what is driving this thought process, in which at the end of the day, it makes people wonder who is right or who is wrong. This China is not so tell who's wrong or who's right. It's just to put a focus point, a double thinking, a thought process, like a mirror. You're watching yourself. Democrat, on the other hand, they have this immigration issue. It's funny because currently they're allowing everyone into the country legally or mainly illegally, which is, I don't know. It's not my preference to say if it's something that's right. But the thing is that you're bringing in people by virtue of liberal art or your policy of humanity embrace. It's beautiful. But you have Americans living under the bridge, people homeless, thousands of people homeless in New York. In all over the 50 states of America, there are people that are not able to afford a meal or afford a roof over their head. There are people that are not able to afford surgical, medical procedures. They don't even have enough to have insurance in order for them to take care of their health. But there we have the Democrat pursuing immigration. Oh, everyone's welcome in America. But you have people living here already that are suffering. So what are you doing about them? Oh, no. Ignore them. The immigrants that are coming, like New York, they may give them 5-star hotels to live in. What? Some of the New Yorkers are living under the bridge, living on the subway. They're not able to eat. They don't have a roof over their head. Some of them have not taken showers, taken a bath for the past couple of months. We have immigrants put in Manhattan, 5-star hotel. Do you know how much a night in some of those hotels in Manhattan cost? Some of them cost up to $400 to $500 to $1,000 a day. But then the Democrat would defend themselves based on their selective perceptions of what their culture or what their belief or what their ideology is all about. Controversial viewpoint, focus point, double thinking. Now, let's forget about the politics. Let's look at religion. In religiosity, some of the major religion that we have in the world today is Christianity and Islam, because the population can define that for you. The numbers are huge. So major religious group in the world is Islam and Christianity. Now, the Christian would define what he or she sees as right or wrong based on selective perceptions of the culture of Christianhood or Christendom, or based on the selective perception of their sect or the holy book. That's what they'll define. And on a controversial viewpoint, focus point, set of Christians will accuse you of doing the wrong if you're not going by their selective perceptions of their culture based on the Christendom. Is that right? I don't know. Is it wrong? I don't know. Same thing with Muslims. They believe that a perception or selective perception is governed by their religious background. Religiosity is beautiful. Each sect is beautiful. Whatever you believe, I am posing that whatever makes you happy, it's okay. But the controversial focus point is, why is it that what makes you happy, you're using it to condemn the other person because the other person is not doing that same thing that you're doing? Do you know if what the other person is doing actually makes the other person happy? It's a selective perception. It's out there. Favoritism, memory bias, selective criticism. You want to criticize somebody else because it's not doing it. The Republican criticize the Democrat because they don't have the same ideology. The Christian criticize the Muslim because they don't have the same ideology. The Muslim criticize like that. So back and forth. Pagans, because you're a pagan because you don't practice the same religion that I practice. My religion tells me not to go or be with you or have anything to do with you because you are a pagan. Who gives you that right? This is part one of this unique discussion. Part two, we follow suit in I'll be having a dialogue with some very bright mind. Think about it. Please subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe on this channel to help this channel grow. Like the video, share the video. We have crazy topics. Topics I'll be discussing is squatter right. Squatter right in America. Imagine that you have saved great amount of money for your dream home. Eventually, you are able to secure that mortgage. You're trying to maintain that home before you and your kids get in the house. Then all of a sudden, somebody came from nowhere, get into your house illegally, and now you cannot take that person out by force. You call the cops are like, oh, we can't help you in this matter. You have to take it to court. You're spending money to maintain the house. Now you have to spend extra money to try to take that person who got into your home illegally. Squatters' right. Yes, there's something called squatters' rights. It's America. Come on, we'll talk about it.